Change. It's never easy. The whole world seems to be in constant flux. Seasons, people, situations, ever changing. Embracing change is something we hear about often. Accepting the fact that you can't keep everything under control isn't easy. But then again, life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. There are things getting adjusted, modified, changing, and it's happening right before our eyes. Those changes are welcomed here. And while some are subtle, others are grand. We've long heard that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Here in Chiefs Kingdom, we sure hope that's the case.
It was 208 days ago that the Chiefs hoisted the Lombardi Trophy for the second time in 4 years. It was an unforgettable night, and it gave way to an offseason of celebration following yet another championship. But with the 2023 season now upon us, it's finally time to defend our title. We are 2 hours from kickoff. You've waited 7 months for this very moment. It's finally here. It is time for football in Chiefs Kingdom. Let's do this. My name is Matt McMullen, joined by voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. This is Field Pass, presented by StorageMart. And Mitch, the last several months have been a lot of fun. It's all in the past now, though. The journey to Super Bowl 58 begins tonight.
Matt, it's been a whirlwind. Honestly, the last 6.5 months have been crazy, but still an exciting time. But once the banner drops tonight, it'll be very exciting. We'll get to that in a second. But at that moment, it turns into the 64th season of Chiefs football in the 104th NFL season, the 2023 season, and it begins tonight.
We're going to talk all about this matchup here over the next 20 minutes or so, but you said it. It's banner night in Kansas City. It's going to be an incredible evening, I think. We're not matching tonight because you're hosting the festivities on the field here in just about 2 hours. Mitch, this is your 30th season as voice of the Chiefs. It's hard to believe. What's tonight going to mean to you?
It's beyond the wildest dreams, honestly. You know, we did this after the Super Bowl 54 celebration, and it was COVID.
Yeah.
It was, 15,000 people in here. We were distanced. I talked to Clark Hunt about it last night. Tonight the vibe will be incredibly different because this place will be roaring, and I will introduce it as the loudest stadium on the planet, and that'll get everybody going. But, you know, as a little kid growing up in the Chiefs Kingdom, I was, but you never dream of this. Not 2 titles, not a night tonight where we get to celebrate what's going to happen. And to do it with the Hunt family, I think it's so easy to overlook them and overlook Clark Hunt's leadership, but also the generational transfer that happened. Look at the other teams in this league and what happened to them, but the generational transfer and the commitment by the next generation to not only enhance Lamar and Norma's legacy, but to, make it even better. So we're going to celebrate all of that tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be very special and incredible, and I'm with you. I mean, we kind of did this a few years ago for the 2020 season after we won the title in 2019. It was great for what it was, but it just wasn't going to be quite the same as tonight will be, right? Just because not a full stadium, COVID restrictions, all of that. Tonight's going to be a true celebration, and I can't wait to see how it pans out and how everything for you on the field is going to be amazing. So we're going to talk about the game now, as big as banner night is, but there is a football game to be played. We're going to kick off the 2023 NFL season, and fortunately for the Chiefs, no quarterback in the NFL is better in Week 1 games than our quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. The numbers are just mind-boggling. In 5 career season openers, Patrick has thrown 18 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. 18 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and the most important stat of all is that Mahomes is 5-0 in those season opening games. No other team in the NFL since 2018 is 5-0 in season openers. Just incredible stuff from QB1.
And if he goes 3-0 tonight, it'll be an all-time NFL record to do it in 6 consecutive years in the season opening game. But it just tells you how dialed in he is for Week 1 and how much he prepares. So it's not a coincidence. And you look at who they played in these games where he had to, these Week 1 games have been tough games. That includes a road game against the Chargers, a road game against the Steelers. I mean, we can go right down the list. The game here against the Texans when they were good on the last time we did banner drop night. So it's exciting to see what Patrick Mahomes can do against a emerging Lions team.
Well, he threw for 360 yards and 5 touchdowns in week 1 against the Cardinals last year. Not bad. Let's just do that again here tonight. And, of course, that huge game in week 1 gave way to an incredible offensive season for the Chiefs last year. Of course, it was the #1 offense in the NFL last season in terms of both points and yardage. Now, we got thrown a bit of a curveball on Tuesday when Travis Kelce hyperextended his knee in practice. Now, Travis is officially listed as questionable coming into this game. There's some reports out there. We don't know officially if he's going to play or not, but if he doesn't play, who are some offensive playmakers you're looking to step up here in this game?
Well, let's just keep this in mind here. Last year, 9 different players had 2 touchdown catches or more. The Chiefs were on the cusp of an NFL record. You're looking at a full a iPad that has over 800 plays. And so your answer, my answer to you would be everybody. Honestly, and Kelce's production, if he does not play, and you know he wants to play in the worst way, we'll know here in a couple of minutes. But everybody, there's 7 wide receivers on this team that all have a high ceiling. Noah Gray could have a breakout game. The running backs will be involved. All of them, all 3 of them. Don't sleep on Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this game either, right? So my answer is this long algebraic equation with about 15 variables in there because with Andy Reid, it's not just an apples-to-apples replacement if Kelce can't go. It'll be a whole basket of fruit.
Well, here's the thing. We talked about the depth this team has at pass catcher all summer long and how excited we are about it. It may be tested quite a bit here in week 1, but that's not necessarily a bad thing when you're getting ready for a full season. Now, let's talk about this Lions defense a little bit that those offensive playmakers will be facing. It's an interesting study because overall, if you look at the big numbers last year, the Lions struggled defensively. They gave up the most yards per game of any team in the NFL last season, and they were the 28th ranked scoring defense in the NFL last year. Now, they got better as the season went on, and they added some playmakers in the offseason, and they have some young players on this defense they're very excited about, notably Aiden Hutchinson, the #2 overall pick in last year's draft. He'll be a challenge for our new tackles in Juwan Taylor and Donovan Smith tonight.
Let's throw in Charles Harris in there, your Missouri Tiger,
Yep.
a Lincoln Prep Blue Tiger from here in Kansas City, the campus that's right by the grounds of the old Municipal Stadium. This defense, don't be fooled by their overall defensive numbers. Don't. You have to look at weeks 9 through 18. They won 8 of the last 10 games. That's been quoted. What has not been quoted was the fact that they were one of the top defenses from a standpoint. They had 16 takeaways, Matt, in the last weeks 9 through 18. And they had 28 sacks weeks 9 through 18. They went from -5 to +12 in the turnover margin in that big surge at the end of the year. That's what you look at when you look at this Detroit defense, not that they're 30th in the league overall in total defense, because you almost have to discount the first 8 weeks of the season.
And really, as a team, they finished as strong as any team in the NFL last year. They won 8 of their final 10 games, nearly made the playoffs, and they knocked the Packers out of the playoffs in that final game of the season last year. This is a hungry team and a team that's trying to carry momentum here into this season. Now, switching gears a bit, one good news for the Chiefs is that for whatever reason, Kansas City has had a ton of success against NFC opponents over the last several years. The Chiefs have won 16 consecutive regular season games against the NFC, 16 of them. It's ridiculous. It's the second longest inter-conference winning streak in NFL history since the conferences became a thing in the 60s. Only the Patriots, who won 17 straight inter-conference games from 2005 to 2009, have a longer streak. So if we win tonight, we're going to match an NFL record. How do you explain the success against the NFC?
Well, let's just take a streak and look at it even further, because the last time they lost to an NFC team, Patrick Mahomes did not play. It was on this field of the Green Bay Packers. The last time they lost to an NFC team where Mahomes played was the Seattle game in December of 2018 in Seattle. So that takes it even kind of a more perspective. And so why the Chiefs are hard to play if you don't see them on. They're hard to play anytime, but they're very difficult to play if you don't see them with regularity. There's so much volume to this offense. Even defensively, Spags is very creative. You see things you don't see all the time in a week-to-week basis in the National Football League. So we see this where teams go all in to prepare for the Chiefs, and then the next week they lose because they've spent so much time in trying to prepare for the volume of Kansas City. Now, being a Week 1 opponent, Detroit has more time than a normal NFC team would have. But still, you also have to look at Andy Reid in opening games. He's 9-1 as a Chiefs head coach in opening games. That's tied for the all-time NFL record by a head coach with a single team. Tonight, if he wins to go 10-1, that's an NFL record. So when the Chiefs have time to prepare, we know they're dangerous. And other teams have got, if you don't see them with regularity, the Chiefs are very difficult to play against.
It's just remarkable stuff to win 16 consecutive games against the other conference. It's not a divisional game or an AFC game, so we really don't talk about it that much. I wasn't even aware of this streak until a few days ago. We just kind of get used to winning all these games, but it's incredible stuff. If you expand it further and include the playoffs, so the 3 Super Bowls, the Chiefs are 21-4 against NFC opponents since 2018. Some added context, those 21 wins are more than 3 NFC teams have against their own conference in that span. So it's just crazy. Hopefully we can make it 17 straight here tonight against the Lions. It won't be easy, though. I mentioned this Lions squad is hungry and finished last season strong, and their offense is the real strength of this Lions squad. This was the number 5 scoring offense in the NFL last season, and there's a lot to break down here, but I want to ask you about their quarterback first, and Jared Goff. What stands out to you about him?
Will had a great year last year, 29 touchdowns, over 7 interceptions. People talk about the 54-51 game with Mahomes that he had in that Monday night game when he was the Rams quarterback. But here's what stands out, Matt, a couple of things. Last year at home, he had 23 touchdowns and 3 picks. On the road, 6 touchdown passes and 4 picks. It was the widest divergence in National Football League history in that many attempts by a guy at home versus on the road. So tonight, hopefully, the GEHA Field at Arrowhead crowd will bother him. The second thing that comes to mind is his proficiency, Jared Goff, in play-action passes. His quarterback rating last year, Matt, on PAP, play-action passes, was number 1 in the NFL. Pat was second, but Goff was first. So the Chiefs defensively have got to remain disciplined and not bite on fakes. Also try to mitigate the run game if they can so that the play-action game is not as effective. 16% of his dropbacks last year were on play-action passes. This Lions offense is all about the play-action pass.
Yeah, and he has a bunch of playmakers in this offense as well. Guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He caught 106 passes for 1,161 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. They also have a very talented backfield with rookie Jahmyr Gibbs and veteran David Montgomery. And for more on that duo, I caught up with Field Yates from ESPN earlier this week. All right, we're joined now by one of our favorite people. It's Field Yates from ESPN. And Field, I want to ask you about this Lions backfield. It underwent a bit of a makeover this offseason by adding Jahmyr Gibbs, the rookie out of Alabama, and David Montgomery from the Bears. I want to start with Gibbs. Really interesting, dynamic player. He led the Crimson Tide in receptions and rushing yards last year. What kind of challenge do you envision him being for the Chiefs on Thursday night?
Well, there are a couple of different ways in which he's a challenge, Matt. And first of all, great to be on. I always love talking football with you, Chiefs football with you, and can't wait for the season to get going tonight. But with Jahmyr Gibbs, there are 2 separate factors that you are dealing with if you're the Chiefs defense. One is the natural skill set. And I'm sure the Chiefs and all their tape study leading up to the draft are very familiar with what Jahmyr Gibbs can do. You mentioned how productive he was both as a rusher and a receiver. This goes back to his time prior to Alabama as well. He played at Georgia Tech, was the best player on that offense for a couple of seasons. He's awesome in the return game. I don't like to, the minute a player steps into the NFL, draw a comparison to a guy who's been a high-level Pro Bowler, but Alvin Kamara was the name that was often compared for Jahmyr Gibbs in the pre-draft process. Very, very good runner, very, very good receiver, probably even a better receiver than he is a runner, which tells you something because he was so productive for the Crimson Tide out of the backfield. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Lions find ways to get him the ball often as a receiver on Thursday night, and that kind of leads into the second part of the challenge, that the Chiefs and every team facing a talented rookie in week 1 have to account for, which is that until you've seen that player in action, you don't know exactly how he's going to be utilized. Now, the same thing applies for the Lions and all the Chiefs' new additions. So this is not a problem that is unique to Kansas City, but it's always interesting to see how a player who has a skill set is actualized with his new team, and whether it takes a month to get rolling, a week to get rolling, or maybe just one play, because we've certainly seen some instant impact rookies in recent seasons at that running back spot.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique challenge when it is a rookie and a high-profile rookie that we expect to be a big part of their offensive game plan. Coach Spagnuolo just a few days ago mentioned that the Chiefs coaches are looking back at Alabama film just to get an idea of what Gibbs can do. He didn't play a ton in the preseason, so we're really going to find out tonight how much they want to use him and how they want to use him in this offense. Now, the other part of this equation is David Montgomery, a veteran from Chicago, comes over to Detroit, an NFC North crossover. He's a player that's also very versatile, has at least 1,000 yards from scrimmage in each of the last 4 years. How do you see him fitting into this Lions game plan?
Yeah, it feels like the Lions this offseason had a very specific plan in mind to replace two departed backs. They had Jamal Williams, who led the NFL in rushing touchdowns last year with virtually no passing game impact. And then they had DeAndre Swift, who was traded to Philadelphia, but was a much more impactful player in the passing game. And it feels like they said, we can get a lot of what those two players brought to the table out of two new players and be even better. So I think David Montgomery will have more passing game impact than Jamal Williams. But if there's a player who's going to lead the Lions in carries every single week, it's David Montgomery. A solid player, sort of I wouldn't say a lot of glamour to his game. A tough runner, a guy who doesn't have blazing speed, but has good size, good power, good instincts, good balance, does pretty much everything at a pretty solid level. And during an offseason in which the running back market was quite dry for some really star players, not just players in David Montgomery's tier, but players at the franchise tag level, he got a real contract, a 3-year, $18 million deal with the Lions, which I think signified just how much of an impact I think he'll have right now. Not to borrow a cliche, but I suppose it might be appropriate here. This is kind of a thunder and lightning backfield. You've got the power back in Montgomery and the change of pace guy who could take any play to the house in Jahmyr Gibbs.
I'm glad you mentioned how they're losing Swift and Jamal Williams, though, because those two players combined for more than 1,600 rushing yards and 22 touchdowns. You mentioned how Jamal Williams had 17 touchdowns last season. I know the Lions are excited about Gibbs and Montgomery, but those are still some big shoes to fill and some big production to make up. What are your expectations for this Lions backfield here in week one as they try to fill that production and maybe exceed it?
I think that Jahmyr Gibbs brings something to the table that even DeAndre Swift did not. I mean, I think of those four players, he's the most electric, and it's not particularly close. And if you look at the Lions pass catchers, and I'm talking about backs out of the backfield, tight ends, fullbacks, and of course wide receivers as well, it's not like they have a ton of depth at wide receiver in terms of household names that are going to scare you. But especially with Jamison Williams out for the first 6 games due to his suspension for violating the NFL's gambling policy. But what they do have is guys who are really good after the catch, and that's an area that I think Jahmyr Gibbs fits into. If you go back to late last season, this team finished 7-2 down the stretch. They were awesome. They nearly made the playoffs, but what they did was scheme the heck out of playmakers in the same way that you often see that with the Chiefs, right? Especially during a transition year at the wide receiver last season. It wasn't that the Chiefs had one wideout that they consistently leaned upon. It was kind of a committee approach. And I think that you'll see some of that with the Lions is that Jahmyr Gibbs may not be lined up as a tailback on every play. He may be split out wide, maybe in the slot. Who knows? Maybe some wildcat. I have no idea. Their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, alluded to some creativity in recent comments, but I think what he brings to the table is something that the other 3 backs you mentioned did not, which is game-changing speed and electricity that every time he's on the field, whether the Chiefs are declaring him as a running back or a wide receiver or what, they're going to have to say, let's find that guy because he's got some special ability.
Yeah, it should be interesting. This Lions offense was among the best in the NFL last year. With these new faces, we'll see how things come together here in week one. Field, awesome stuff, man. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Matt. Let's have a great season ahead.
All right, great stuff there from Field Yates. We're now joined by a very special guest. It's Chad Henne. Chad, what's going on, man?
I'm doing it, man. We're here in Arrowhead, and I'm super excited to be here.
It is terrific to see you, my friend. We missed you at training camp, by the way.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but I got to ask you, I mean, this has to feel kind of weird, like the first time in 15 years you're on the side of the pool, not swimming in it. What's it like?
It's different, but just seeing everybody, seeing the relationships that you created, you don't miss the football aspect of it, but you miss the locker room, the camaraderie, the guys around, and that's the biggest thing that hits home, and seeing everybody that part of it.
Now, Blaine Gabbert has kind of taken the reins for you as the backup quarterback here in Kansas City. I believe you played with Blaine in Jacksonville several years ago. Just what are your thoughts on Blaine and how he's going to handle this role here in Kansas City as Patrick's primary backup?
Yeah, I came in with in Jacksonville when Blaine was his second year, and I think the world of him. He's a tough kid. He's smart. And at the same time, he understands it. Like, he was with Tom Brady for how many years in, Tampa Bay. He understands the backup role, and I think he'll do a great job with Patrick, giving him his insight and really, getting part of the game plan as well.
We saw him launch it in the preseason. 7 routes, and
he's throwing it down the field. I love it. Big, strong arm.
Yeah.
You guys know from Missouri. He's got all the talent in the world. Just give him an opportunity if he has that.
I got to tell you a moment. I want to ask you about this. We were on the buses leaving the hotel after Super Bowl 57. Dan Israel, the executive producer of the network, goes, because we just heard about your retirement. He goes, who's going to win divisional playoff games now? What did that mean to you? And it gives me chills to even ask you about it. But winning those 2 games like you did.
Yeah, just going back and just reminiscing on them. It just shows you all the preparation, all the hard work that you put in over the years that really bring you back to this stage, and just like, I didn't actually screw up my career. Like, there's many times where you look in my career, I'm like, man, I did so well at some places, then it's like that. But then you get in those moments and you help out the team the best you can. You get them, you move on in the playoffs, and then you finally get that big ring at the end. And it's definitely time well spent.
Well, let's see. In 2020, he throws the ball on 4th down on our side of the
right
field
out here
to beat the Browns. And then, of course, last year leading a 98-yard touchdown drive. Kind of keeps everyone's head above water while we don't know what's going on with Patrick. You're a legend, man, and we appreciate you here in Chiefs Kingdom. And my last question for you, then we'll let you go. You're banging the drum here tonight. So with all that in mind, what's it going to mean to you that Chiefs Kingdom's going to embrace you tonight and you can be part of all this?
Super awesome. When they asked me, I was like, absolutely. When do I need to be here? When do I need to come? And I'm there, no doubt about it. I've seen many people do it. I know it's a struggle. It's a long time. So you got to see if I've been exercising and actually fulfilled the opportunity. But I'm super excited and glad I can do it right here. Chiefs Kingdom, means the world to me. Me and my family, my kids grew up here. So super excited to be back.
Yeah, well, you'll be awesome. Thanks for being here tonight and have fun.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Blessings to you, brother.
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.
Oh, man, so awesome.
All right, Mitch, so we're waiting on the inactives list here. We'll get them any moment now, but we'll talk about a few things before we get it. Talked to Field Yates about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I'm curious for your thoughts on those running backs here in this backfield.
I talked to Matt Nagy this week, Chiefs offensive coordinator, who was David Montgomery's head coach in Chicago when Demo had his best year, which was the COVID year of 2020. And Matt's eyes lit up about him. Matt loves him. Doesn't love him tonight, but he loves him at the end of this game. But Montgomery is he's a pro's pro, very effective. Go back to what I said about play action passing. If Montgomery's running downhill, then the Chiefs have a challenge. Gibbs is a perfect complement to that because we know about his 4.36 speed and the fact that he can line up at receiver. Think about what the Chiefs do with their running backs and what they do with the receivers. Receivers become runners, runners become receivers, and that is Gibbs. But honestly, the big key tonight is David Montgomery, and you Iowa State fans know all about him.
Before Chad came on, we also talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown briefly. I want to get your thoughts on him because just an incredible season for him last year for Detroit. He's not a super physically imposing kind of guy. He's not very big. He doesn't really have blazing speed. He just finds ways to get open, and he catches the football and makes plays. What impresses you about Amon-Ra St. Brown?
The fact that he has 196 catches in 2 years. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a National Football League record. He is tied with Justin Jefferson and Michael Thomas for that honor. So just think about that for a second. To me, I know you mentioned Tyler Lockett this week, and I think that's a fabulous comp.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like young Keenan Allen. The way he works the slot, he's 74% catch rate. The guy catches everything. They rely on him. He's 26% of the targets. He is a challenge now in the slot for Spags and the defensive secondary and the linebackers, who also have to get involved in defending Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Now, we just got the inactives for today's game. Not a huge surprise. The reports were out there, but Travis Kelce is indeed inactive for today's game with that hyperextended knee. Obviously, it's a bummer. You want to have Travis out there, but on one end, it's a great opportunity for maybe the younger players on this team. And really long-term, it's week 1. We have 10 days before we play the Jaguars in week 2. Hopefully, he can be ready for that game.
We've been around Coach Reed now for 11 seasons. Same thing with Rick Burkhalter. If they will be very cautious with the player, particularly Travis Kelce, the greatest tight end ever play, who has played, ladies and gentlemen, 9,124 snaps since the beginning of the 2014 season, and a lot of those are high leverage snaps. That's a lot for a guy into his 30s. So it's taking precaution here. It's also the first time the Chiefs will ever play a game without Chris Jones and Travis Kelce. Chris Jones missed 7 games in his career, but Kelce played in all 7. Kelce's only missed 3 games since the beginning of 2014, and Chris Jones played in all 3 of those games. So, to me, it is an opportunity. Go back to what we said before, Matt. You and I have looked at this team and watched them all throughout the spring and summer and training camp. They have to compensate here. But if the Chiefs can win this game without those guys, it's almost like a game and a half because of the confidence that will give this team moving forward to try to win this game without Kelce and Chris.
Well, Coach Reed always says next man up, right? And we need that here tonight. And again, it's a great opportunity for those guys to get the experience here in this game. Now, looking at the Lions briefly, we knew Emmanuel Moseley would not play in this game, and he is indeed inactive. He has a knee injury. He's coming off a torn ACL suffered last year. He's a free agent that came over from the 49ers at corner. I think they thought he would be one of their starting corners, but he can't go yet. Still impacts their depth at cornerback. We'll see if that matters.
And he was involved in both jet chip wasp, he blows coverage in that, and the run to immortality where Byron Pringle runs him into the stands. So Emmanuel Moseley, sorry you're not playing, but we appreciate those 2 plays in Super Bowl 54.
And then also defensive tackle Isaiah Buggs. This has been a very weird situation to follow. He's inactive here tonight. He was their starting nose tackle last year and was going to be their starting nose tackle coming into this season. There's been some weird stuff, though. Like on Monday, he said that he was being benched, and he's indeed inactive here in this game. We'll see if that affects them at all with maybe some younger players in there at nose tackle.
Not sure what's going on there, Matt. They gave him a contract extension this year.
Yeah.
And so over the last several weeks, though, all of the signs have been pointing him not playing tonight. So the Chiefs don't have Chris Jones, but not having Buggs in the middle of this defense for the Lions is also an issue for them.
Yeah, it is. For the
Good
most part, this Lions squad is healthy, though, and they are hungry, as we've talked about throughout this episode, but the Chiefs are also hungry. Despite all the success that we've enjoyed over the last several years, this team is not complacent, and as hungry as the Lions are, the Chiefs are just as hungry to prove that they belong still at the top of the mountaintop. For Mitch Holthus, I'm Matt McMullen. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Let's go get a victory.